are many times, like, you know, I get asked to play a wedding, I get asked to play a bar, I get asked to play, you know, a mall. You just don't know what you're getting sometimes. You know, you can show up to a wedding and then all of a sudden people are requesting all country. And I don't know many country songs, so I really make a point to learn a little Carrie Underwood, a little Garth Brooks, not necessarily because that's what I enjoy, but because I know when all else fails, I know that will help the situation if I know something that they're asking for.
Mhm. Yeah, most
sometimes
definitely.
It doesn't work out like that. Where once I was like kind of heckled at a bar by a guy who was asking me to play a song from the 90s that I'd never even heard of, and he like, you know, kept talking to me saying, "Yo, my girl really wants to hear, you know, this song," and then all of a sudden he launched into, "Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?" And I was looking at him, and while looking at him, I thought, oh, he's doing this because he kind of looks like Robert De Niro.
No.
And people must always ask him to do this, and this is his way of, like, paying me or, like, bribing me to play a song I don't know. And it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I got a free Robert De Niro impression.
There you go. See, you know,
that was very awkward.
You weren't even looking for that. It just happened. You know, it's like,
I could have.
Oh, gosh.
It was weird.
Well, in your you know, in your musical journey over the last 10 years, what is something that kind of just stands out for you as kind of like a you know, a memorable moment for you that you just will never forget?
It's like little things, you know, where I do a lot of social commentary, and sometimes you don't know where your music's going to go. And I had a kid who wrote me, and I say kid, I'm 33. I shouldn't be using the word kid so much, but I had a young kid. I know, right? I had a young kid send me an email that said that he heard one of my songs and decided not to commit suicide. And to me, that's like, you know, like you get to meet a lot of cool people, like a lot of famous people when you're traveling, you know, Cyndi Lauper or India Ari or cool people that I got to meet like that. But then on the same hand, like, those things happen so fast, and you never know what you're going to get when you're around those people. But to have somebody really touched by what you do, because I feel music, my job in music is to be a discussion starter, not necessarily like, you know, the be-all and end-all. I just kind of bring up topics that I think aren't being discussed or say it in my own way, and you just hope that it comes out clear enough that somebody relates to it. I mean, I was a very shy kid growing up, and that was the only thing I ever wanted, was somebody to get what I was talking about. You know, and I just can't, sometimes I can't do it by talking. I have to do it by lyrics, you know.
And I love how you describe that, because oftentimes, you know, I've said to Pam, you know, even that music is a universal language, and no matter, you know, what kind of lines may divide us as the human race, music is the one thing that is a commonality that we all can identify with, that we can all, you know, enjoy together, and brings people together. And I think it's the only thing out there that truly does that, and it speaks to people in so many different ways. You know, how I may interpret a song may be completely different from how Pam interprets it, or the next person. I mean, it just really depends on how the song speaks to you, and you know,
and what kind of mood you're in too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I had a song that I wrote called "What I Can Give" about my mother-in-law who passed away from breast cancer, and it was very hard. And I wrote it while she was still alive, and she was just a great woman, and she was very touched by it. And it ended up getting played at her funeral, which was devastating. Because you just never know that, you know, something like that you write for somebody is going to be in memoriam of them. And then maybe about a year later, after releasing it on one of my CDs, you know, this couple came up to me and said at a show, "Oh, my gosh, will you please play What I Can Give? It's our song." And I was like, how can that be your song? Like, and I really had to step aside from myself and go, don't ruin it for them. Like, that's how they interpreted it. It means something to them in that way. And just because of how I wrote it and who I wrote it for doesn't mean that it can't exist for them as that.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
You know, I had to stop myself from being like, what are you talking about?
I would love to hear that song.
People...
I'd love to hear that song. My mom died of breast cancer too, so
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It would probably mean the same thing to me as you wrote it, but if you would never have told me that, or any of our listeners, and I went to listen to it, I might have gotten a different interpretation as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unless you're very, and sometimes I don't like being so literal, because when you become literal, you leave, not that you do it so intentionally, but sometimes it makes it a little trite, you know, to be so specific. You know, it doesn't cross over as much as you would expect it to, and songs change. You know, even over the years, like the meaning of songs, you know, you write something at a bad time, and then somewhere along the line it becomes like a happier song.
Yeah.
Now, what I wanted to touch on, your wonderful cooking videos that I get such a kick out of. How did you come up with that? I mean, other than because you were trying to teach yourself how to cook.
Well, my grandfather, I grew up with my dad and my grandparents. My mom passed away when I was very little. My dad's parents came to live with us, and I mean, they lived with us on military bases, and you know, they raised us until we were both me and my sister were both 18. My grandfather was the cook, and my grandmother was, you know, did the laundry. And they had their roles, and it never changed. And my grandfather was the type that always said, "Get out of my kitchen."
Oh.
You know, like, constantly. Like, he didn't want you over his shoulder. He didn't want you seeing what he did. He didn't want you knowing how he did it.
His secret.
And I never really learned to cook. You know, so, which honestly, it's a skill that's really, you know, if you learn how to cook, you learn how to cook not just for now, but for the rest of your life. I mean, it's a pretty big skill. And I remember in high school people talking about home ec, which is something that I didn't take because they just didn't make it available to everybody, or, you know, it just seemed like, oh, that's for the girls or whatnot. But, you know, in that class they taught people how to cook, and I'm like, that's so stupid. They should have taught everybody how to cook.
Right.
You know, because
our home ec was for whoever wanted to join, so maybe they just do it differently in different areas. Yeah,
that was in Florida in the 90s, and I don't know, it was just something that never crossed my radar. And then about in 2010, I was doing pretty well, playing a lot of gigs, and I had some money set aside, and I saw a place in town was doing cooking classes with a really nice chef that went to the Culinary Institute of America. And I thought, it's kind of expensive, and my best friend, Cass, was like, you know, you're learning how to cook for the rest of your life. I think that's worth it. So I took it, and I just fell in love with the idea. I was so afraid to cook before. You know, I'd overcook a chicken breast, so it was pretty much not a chicken breast.
It was leather.
You know, you just don't want to hurt yourself.
Right.
So I never knew that I could be creative with cooking until, you know, the course was over. And then the local NBC affiliate was looking for people who weren't attached to restaurants to do recipes. So I thought it was a good challenge to come up with my own recipes and be on TV in a different way than always being like, hey, everybody, I got a show. And then it worked out, and people were really receptive to it. I got, you know, recognized around town quite a bit. But the segment only lasted 3 minutes, which is really not cooking, it's assembling.
Yeah, right.
So I started my own 30-minute cooking show online, and I called it Trial and Eric.
Right, I thought that was
a
so
trained
cute.
chef, you know, I'm just a home cook.
So
well,
I found it really.
How I got started.
I found it really funny that in episode 7 you made paella, which is not an easy dish to cook, and in episode 10 you made grilled cheese for the first time with tomato soup. I kind of would have thought you'd done it the other way around.
Thank you for watching them. It's like those shows are like my little I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but I feel the need to keep doing them.
Oh, definitely. I love them. I not only the recipes and you tell us what's in there, unlike a lot of times where, like you said, those 3-minute little shows where they say, okay, you do this, and you know, and you throw in some of this, and there's really no measurements, so you really don't get a recipe, and you're thinking, boy, I'd really like to make that. You take the time to explain everything from start to finish.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
And throw in a song.
I try.
And it's always interesting to see how other people, you know, they put their own spin and variation into, you know, a basic recipe like a grilled cheese sandwich. You know, I would have never thought to use tomato soup, but, you know, who knew? So, I mean.
I did since I was little. We've always had grilled cheese and tomato soup, and you dunk the grilled cheese into the tomato soup and you eat it.
Well,
were you
my parents never made it. It's kind of funny. So you never know, and then I never, you know, just never tried it.
That's so funny. Have you ever thought of trying out for the next Food Network star?
I have. You know, I think about it, but I always seem to miss the deadline. I've tried out, you know, like online where you send in your application for Chopped. I've done that a few times. But, you know,
I love
don't
that
know what,
show, too.
I know. I just thought it'd be really interesting. You know, they give you a few ingredients and to see what you can make with it. It kind of evens the playing field between you and some of these master chefs, you know?
Right. What I love about that show is, did you watch the one with I think it was the Chopped All-Stars or something, where the actual judges were up there cooking and going insane with the different ingredients. They're like, what? How do you do it? What?
I know. I was very jealous. Like Ann Burrell and all those awesome, like, Mario Batali type people. They're all out there, and you're like, they are my heroes. They are my celebrities.
Oh, I know. I love watching that show. My favorite happens to be Tyler Florence, and I know you mentioned him when you were making the paella. Who's your favorite?
My favorite is, it has to be, what's her name? Ina Garten.
Really? I like her, but she makes too fancy food for me.
Well, to me, but you know what? There's a lot of people where I bought all these books. In my kitchen, I have this huge area above my cabinet where I said, you know what? I'm going to collect cookbooks from one end to the other. And over the course of 3 years, it's finally, like, all full. You know, my grandmother gave me some, and I got some from family. And then I got some, you know, you just go to the store and you get, like, you know, Mario Batali or Michael Stein. You know, you get everybody's cookbook. Right. A lot of the cookbooks, you know, what you end up making doesn't really come out the way it looks in the book. Everything that Martha Stewart and Ina Garten make and that their recipes say, it always turns out perfectly. So I kind of, you know, I've kind of gotten to favor both of them for knowing and trusting that their recipes come out perfectly. But there's nothing like starting something and then doing it, and halfway through you're like, this isn't what it's supposed to look like. And you're looking at the page, and you're looking at what you're making, and it doesn't match. And you've done everything the way they tell you to.
As long as it tastes good, it doesn't really matter how it looks, though. You know?
Yeah,
that's right. In the South, we always say it really doesn't matter how it looks. If it tastes great, the looks, you know, because it's going to get eaten anyway, so it doesn't matter. That will be such an afterthought, you know, if it tastes good. And, you know, and to what you were saying, Eric, on those cooking shows when everything comes out looking just stellar, you know, and pristine for the camera, you know, I often think, how many times did she have to make that pie before it looked like that, or that dish, or it just presentation, you know, they got it, you know, because that's the magic behind the scenes is that they can, you know, in multiple takes is that they can do that. And so every time it looks wonderful. And then, you know, it's just really interesting to think, well, I wonder how many times they really had to do that over and over and over. So although, you know, they're veteran seasoned chefs and they know their craft probably better than anybody, but still you do have to remember they are human, and I'm sure every once in a while they have a goof too, and but
yeah.
you just never see that. We don't ever know it, because they are the epitome of perfection in the kitchen, that we all aspire